Alright, let's get to it. Image scaling refers to how your graphic media, whether that's images, videos, or motion graphics, is going to be resized when you import it into the timeline and the resolution doesn't match. At the top, you have a Resize Filter that controls how this media will be treated. Optimized for playback will switch between bilinear when the footage is playing and sharper when your footage is paused. Sharper is the best option for HD rescaling, whether it's up or down, but will take a lot of processing power. Smoother is recommended for SD or standard resolution workflows. And bilinear is the lowest quality of the three, ideal for playback. On an average workstation, optimized for playback is the recommended setting. You can choose to apply these settings for your proxy footage as well. You have some override commands for input and output scaling based on pre-existing presets. The anti-alias edges might be familiar to people who have previously worked with programs like Photoshop that allow you to soften the edges on sharp elements like text to avoid artifact effects. In this case, the anti-alias edges will apply to the edges of your image, either when it's being letterboxed or pillarboxed. Again, you can have it set to automatically decide when such anti-aliasing is advisable, or you could have it always on or always off. Lastly, you've got Debayer quality. Once again, the Optimize for Playback option uses a simpler debayering method when playing back, but a sharper filter when paused. You can choose to always be on a sharpened filter, but you have to ensure that your computer has the processing power. Otherwise, you can use a smoother filter for both playback and pausing. Next, you have your input scaling presets. So, if you've got mismatched resolution on your image, your video, or your graphics, DaVinci Resolve will automatically resize it based on the selection that you make here. Center crop with no resizing means that your image will stay its original size and will simply be cropped off if it extends beyond the edges. If the image is smaller than your resolution, it will simply be surrounded by a black outline. Scale full frame with crop implies that the shortest dimension of your image or video will be scaled to full size and any additional media cropped. Scale entire image to fit is the default selection. It implies that the longest dimension will be scaled to fit your screen, and if the ratio of the image does not equal your screen, you will end up either with a pillar boxing effect, which is blanking on either side of the image, or with letterboxing at the top and bottom. Stretching the frame to all corners is not recommended because this will distort your image as it is forced into the edges of your screen. But it might be acceptable if all you're working with is color mattes. Lastly, you have the option to control what your output scaling will be. By default, your output scaling matches your current timeline settings. So the resolution that you're working in will also be the resolution that you render your project in. But you could choose to render at a different resolution. For example, you might have a rough edit that you're sending out for quick approval. In that case, rather than Full HD, you might go to HD Ready. You do have the option of going for a higher output, but bear in mind that if you didn't shoot your footage at a higher resolution, then it's not going to come out looking more detailed. This portion of the settings renders what you're going to see on the Deliver page, so you can still change these before exporting your project regardless of what you've set up here. On a workstation with good processing power, you can also take advantage of the output scaling preset for a smooth 4K to 1080p to 4K workflow. More on that later. In the next tutorial, we're going to look at the next few settings: the editing, the color, the camera raw, and the color management presets. I hope you found that useful, and thank you very much for watching.